costume. So, this story is called If You Hear a Bell Ringing in This Forest, Run. Dun dun dun! So it should be fun. I don't know. I feel like I've listened to some of MrBallen's stories kind of like in the background because I think Jello listens to them a lot. So yeah, pretty interested. Oh yeah, I should hold. Ow. "15 months, let's go! Longer than I've been streaming. Hell yeah. That's how dedicated Lamb is."
15 lol.
Lamb's like, I'm going to support my friendo so much even before she starts streaming. But yeah, MrBallen, like, Jello loves him, and I believe I've listened to his content as well. He's great. Make sure you go subscribe to his YouTube. Akibara, hello! Thank you for the lurk. Yes, stream's going well. We finished Father's Day, so we're gonna listen to a story now. To a scary story. Okay, let's go. Okay, hello.
Today marks the beginning of our
Hold on, it's loud. It's loud.
annual Scarathon, where for the entire month of October, all I do is tell you true, scary campfire stories. But before
Oh, yes. Okay. Let me edit the stream. We'll take this here out. Take this out. Spooky season horror. I'll put myself in the just chatting category, I suppose. And if a bell rings in this forest, run. Spooky story. If a bell rings in this forest, run! Spooky story time. Done. Okay. Oh shoot. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see Katsuya in the mix it up. So rest in peace. Rest in peace to Katsuya's stream streak. Oh god.
Before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format,
let me know how
you've
the
come
volume
to the right
is.
place because that's all we do, and we upload 2 or 3 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to sing at the like button's wedding for free, and then when it's time for their first dance, sing a rendition of Du Hast by Rammstein in an Australian accent. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story. In June of 2019, an 18-year-old girl named Bella wrapped up her first year in college and headed home for the summer. Her family lived just outside of this small town in France that was tucked up in the mountains and surrounded by this huge forest. And so growing up, Bella spent a lot of her time out in this forest, either by herself or...
Bro, I would not ever live in a house in the middle of freaking the forest. What the hell? That just sounds creepy.
or with her father or other members of her family. And so she knew the forest like the back of her hand. Her favorite place to go in this forest was the man-made lake that sat kind of at the center of this forest.
Ooh.
It wasn't huge, but it was a beautiful view. It was very peaceful, and so she liked going out there. The way she would get to it is she would leave her house, she would hop in her car, she would drive a couple of miles down the road, and she would pull off into the shoulder of this road, and there was no signage that said this was the pull-off to get to the man-made lake. This was an area that she and her family had discovered, that there was this particular trail you could take. And so she would pull off at the shoulder, she would get out, and she would turn away from the road and just walk directly into the trees, which butted right up against the road. And very quickly, after walking into the woods, after going through some thick underbrush, she would reach this kind of clearing, and she would see up ahead this little stream. And off to the left.
Yeah, that sounds like a bunch of no for me. But it also sounds like really peaceful. Like you just go there, hang out. You can do like drawing peacefully, playing, whatever. Ooh, words on stream might be a good idea.
Side of this stream is what looked like this kind of beaten up little footpath, but actually what it was an animal trail. So animals just kind of made their way around this area all the time, and so it kind of carved out a path. And so Bella would walk down to this animal path, and she would walk along the path that kind of went parallel with the stream, and she would walk for maybe 15 or 20 minutes until this animal path veered hard to the left, like kind of went away from the stream. At that point, Bella would abandon the animal path and just continue walking along this stream, both stepping in the stream on some rocks and standing on either side when she could. And she would follow the stream due north, just going straight into the heart of this forest for about an hour, walking at a fairly leisurely pace until the stream connected with this east to west running river. And at this point, Bella would turn left, facing west, and she would follow along this riverbank about 20 minutes until the river fed into the man-made lake. And so she would stay at this lake, sitting on a rock, enjoy the view, and look at the animals, and listen to nature all around her. And then at some point, she would turn around and retrace her steps all the way back to her car. For reference, one leg of this journey from car to lake, or from lake to car, took about 2 hours. Part of the reason Bella really enjoyed being in these woods and being at this lake was because it just kind of felt like they were hers. Because up until this summer in 2019, the only other people that Bella had ever seen anywhere in this forest or near this lake were other members of her family. So it really felt very private. So in June of that year, Bella comes home from college, and almost immediately without the creepy atmosphere, I can totally see this being actually kind of peaceful and stuff. But there is no way in hell that I would have been able to find my way back to the car. I would have been lost forever, for days, for God knows how long. Wants to go out to the man-made lake because she hasn't been in months. She's been in school, and so she's eager to get back to some place that she kind of considered to be her happy place. So one morning she gets up early, and by herself she leaves her house, she hops in her car, she drives the couple miles down the road, she pulls off onto that shoulder, she parks her car, she hops out, she turns away from the road, she walks into the forest, she finds the stream and starts walking along that animal path right to the side of the stream. She walks for a few minutes until she reaches the point where the trail kind of cuts to the left, and she just stays on the stream and is just continuing walking along the stream. And about 30 minutes later, when she was maybe 1 or 2 miles short of the east-west running river, she hears a bell somewhere off in the distance, way out in front of her, out towards the river. It sounds just like a chime, a single chime. And as soon as she hears it, she stops, because there's never any people out here ever, and that bell sound came from somewhere in the forest. And so she stops because she's not really sure if she actually heard that, because it could have just been her mind playing tricks on her. Could be like a trinket on her bag. And so she stops and just kind of listens for a second, and then she starts to hear this bell just continuously start ringing. Now, the ringing was not uniform. It was like constant, but it was kind of sporadic, as if you were holding a bell and kind of ringing it randomly, like you might see at a sports game. And so she's thinking to herself, you know, is there a dog that got lost somewhere up ahead, and it's got a bell on its collar, and that's the sound I'm hearing? But as she's sitting there listening to this kind of sporadic bell sound, she's thinking, that's way too loud to be some rinky-dink bell on a pet's collar. So it's got to be something more robust. Did maybe somebody have a bell inside of a box, and that box got on the river and it's floated down river and it's like crashing into rocks or something? I mean, she's going through these very strange scenarios in her head.
Oh,
but
true,
she's
like
not
someone lost the
concerned
bell.
about the bell. She's actually pretty intrigued, and since the sound of this bell seemed to be coming from the direction she was already traveling, she decided she would just keep on walking and hopefully see whatever it was that was causing this bell sound. And so Bella just began walking along the stream again, kind of listening to this bell and thinking about what it was going to be. And after about 5 minutes of her starting to walk again, the bell just stops. It goes totally silent. And when it does, it actually kind of startles Bella because she'd been listening to it so intently. And so she stops and she's listening, kind of expecting it to go off some more, but it doesn't. All she hears are the sounds of nature all around her. Now, Bella didn't have an explanation for what this bell was or why it stopped, but she really just wasn't that worried about it. She figured there was some sort of explanation for it. There had to be. And so she just kind of shrugged and kept on walking and put her focus back on getting to the lake. About 10 or 15 minutes later, Bella was still walking along the stream. She was still maybe a half mile or a mile short of the east to west running river when she sees up ahead on the left side of the stream as she's walking, there appears to be something laying on the ground that looks like it could be an animal or a rock. She doesn't really know what it is. And as she gets closer, she realizes it's a beaver laying on the ground, and this beaver is missing its head. Now, this is a huge forest, and Bella would have known that, you know, of course, there are wild animals all over the place, and so finding the body of an animal...
Like, I would have been gone. So this, Spidey, so this girl, like, lives in the middle of the forest with her family. And there's this spot that she goes to that's, like, an hour. She has to, like, drive to this certain spot, and it's, like, a man-made lake or something, I think he said. And it's, like, an hour walk. Yeah, it's, like, an hour walk to it, and then an hour walk back to her car. So, like, 2 hours in total. And so there's this one day now that she's going there, and she heard like halfway through the walk to go to the lake, she like heard this bell start ringing. Just like randomly this bell started ringing, and it sounded like it was coming from the way that she was heading already. So she just kind of continued walking towards where the sound was coming from, which I would not. I would have been gone. I would have run back and been gone. And so she was following the source of the sound and eventually came to a part where she found a beaver laying on the ground and its head is missing. And that's where we are so far.
Animal that had been attacked by another animal was not unusual. That's nature. But what did strike Bella as odd was the cut on this beaver's neck was unbelievably neat and uniform, as if its head had been very carefully removed with a very sharp knife. And the beaver's head was nowhere to be found. It certainly did not have the appearance of having its head removed from some predator and its teeth. That would have been very rough. Also, the rest of the beaver's body was intact. So whatever killed this beaver was not interested in eating the beaver. As Bella stood over this beaver and was just staring at it, she also noted that there was no smell. Normally, when something dies, it begins to smell very quickly. It's part of the decomposition process. And so for there not to be a smell indicated to Bella that this beaver must have been killed fairly recently. And then when Bella kind of gently prodded the body with her foot, she realized the beaver's body was still fairly limp. So rigor mortis had not set in. Rigor mortis is another part of the decomposition process where the body kind of stiffens up, and that happens fairly soon after death. And so as Bella is realizing this beaver must have died very recently,
just a dead body.
it dawns on her that most likely whoever or whatever has killed this beaver is probably somewhere nearby. And Bella can't help but connect this dead beaver to that bell she was hearing earlier, which before meant nothing, but considering the bell was roughly coming from the same area where this beaver has now been found, it made her uneasy. And so Bella found herself whipping her head around, looking out into the trees, seeing if, you know, there's some person, a hunter or somebody that would kind of explain what was going on, but There was nothing. And so Bella felt herself starting to panic a little bit, but then she stopped herself and said, calm down, it's broad daylight. I have been coming to these woods for years and years. I've never seen another person. I've never encountered some predatory animal. I'm sure everything is perfectly fine. I got nothing to worry about. And so she stepped over the beaver and kept on walking. Bella would eventually reach the east-west running river. She would turn left and walk for 20 minutes alongside this river. She'd reach the man-made lake. She enjoyed the beautiful view and the scenery. And then at some point she turned around and began retracing her footsteps. She walked past the beaver on the ground all the way back to her car, and she went home. A week later, Bella was sitting around her house when she felt pretty bored and decided kind of abruptly that in order to cure her boredom, she would go back to the place she loved so much, the man-made lake. And so she told her parents where she was going, and then she left the house, hopped in her car, drove to the pull-off, and entered the woods at 6 p.m. Sunset that night was at 9 p.m., and so Bella knew this would need to be a fairly quick turnaround so she didn't get trapped in the woods in the dark. And so Bella finds the animal trail. She follows along the stream until the trail goes left, and she stays on the stream. She continues walking on the stream.
Oh my God. Holy shit. Freaking Jello just scared the shit out of me. He just literally appeared at my side with a plate in front of my face. Literally, I'm bored. Let's go to the woods at 6 p.m.
Sorry, I was just trying to offer you a bite of a hot dog. Maybe not yet. There you go. You okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need fresh underwear?
Okay.
Hey, enjoy.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Jesus. Alright, let's see how her journey through the woods at 6 friggin' p.m. works out. Let's go.
When she starts to hear the distant sound of thunder. And so she looks up in the sky to the trees, and she can see the sky is starting to get dark, but she's still a couple of hours away from sunset. And so between the thunder and the dark skies, she knows a storm is rolling in. But she is determined to get to that lake. And so instead of turning around and saying, okay, I'll come back another time, she just starts jogging along the stream to get there as fast as she possibly can. And almost immediately as she's jogging, the raindrops start to fall. And by the time she passes the beaver corpse on the ground, it hadn't moved, the rain was really coming down, and then about 15 minutes after the corpse, when she hit the east-west running river, that's when the rain was at a full downpour. Still, Bella turned at the river and continued west towards the man-made lake as if she was going to go all the way, but only about a minute or two into this final leg. She still had about 20 minutes to get to the lake. She stops herself and she looks at her watch and she can see it's after...
Okay, so guys, it's 6 p.m. You're going to this forest where you heard a bell and a dead beaver. Okay? You're like, you walk. You're like, yeah, this is a great idea. I'm gonna walk. Then it starts thundering and raining. You still go, right? Like, you still go, right? I sure as hell would not. But apparently this is what you do. You keep going. Good night, Spidey. Good night, Spidey.
8 o'clock already, and she's thinking to herself, you know, if I turn around right now, it's going to take me over an hour to get back to my car. Sunset's at 9 p.m. It's after 8 p.m. now, so already I know I'm going to have to navigate this forest at night in the dark, even if it's just for a little bit at the end. And if I go all the way to the lake and then come all the way back to the car, I'm going to be in the forest after dark for quite a while, maybe up to an hour.
I mean,
thinking, you know, I'm confident I can do that, but it's also pouring rain, I'm cold. If I get lost, this could turn into a very bad situation. And so she ultimately decides that even though she really wants to keep going, she needs to turn around. She needs to.
Oh my God! Okay, good.
And so she turns around and she walks back up alongside this east-west running river to where the stream fed into that river. She turns and begins walking south along this stream, headed back towards the car. On her walk, because the visibility was starting to get quite bad because it was so dark, she had her head down at the ground because she didn't want to trip.
Why wouldn't you at least bring a flashlight?
On muddy areas. She wants to make sure her footing is solid, and so her head is down. The rain is pounding all around her, and she's walking for about 15 15 minutes when all of a sudden something hits her in the top of the head. And so reflexively, she looks up and kind of puts her hands in front of her face to protect herself, and she sees what she had just run into.
Oh no.
It was the beaver corpse. It was hanging from a string that was dangling off a branch right above her. And this beaver's head had been retrieved.
Oh my God.
And the head had been stitched onto the front paws of this beaver. And so she's looking at this beaver that's dangling from this rope. It's carrying its own head, and she's walked square into it. And her first reaction was basically to gag. She was going to vomit. She was so disgusted. And then she began frantically rubbing at her hair where this thing had made contact with her, because there could be juices from the decomposition that got on her. And then after frantically kind of patting at her head for a second, she stops, and something really terrifying dawns on her. Whoever strung this beaver up to this tree and then stitched its head onto its paws, they had done that in the last 30 minutes.
Yes, because
30 minutes earlier, when she was on her way in, she remembered passing the beaver carcass on the ground. She saw it. It had not moved.
And folks, this is why you don't go into the forest at 6 p.m. during the thunderstorms and raining and everything. Like, okay, even planning to have been back before it got dark, still bring a flashlight, lady.
Moved from where it was the week before when she first saw it, and now this beaver is strung up in the tree. And so as the wheels are turning in Bella's head, she realizes that if someone has just done this, then they are probably nearby. And at this point, it's really starting to get dark. The rain is pounding all around her.
2-hour walk for 10 minutes at the
looking
river.
in all directions to see if there's someone out
Seriously?
there that did this. But as she's looking, all she sees is just dark forest in all directions. And she knows she's at least 1 hour, even if she runs from her car. And so suddenly she is totally panicked, and in an effort to calm herself down, she says to herself, okay, I need to get out of here, but I have to walk. If I start running right now, this is going to turn into a complete nightmare.
If you
I
start
just have to try to walk.
Panicking and running, you'll get lost.
This dangling beaver corpse and starts walking along the stream. And as soon as she's past that corpse, she feels the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She can hear movement behind her. She doesn't know what it is. It could be a deer, it could be some animal, but she's too afraid to turn around. And even though she was trying to tell herself to calm down, just keep walking, you're safe, you're freaking yourself out, everything is okay. As she's walking, she could feel herself starting to speed up until finally she was just running down the stream, sprinting actually away from this beaver and whatever it was that was moving around in that area. And at some point, she got so winded from sprinting so fast that she came to a stop, maybe 5 or 6 minutes after seeing this beaver. And as soon as she comes...
Imagine being able to run for a whole 5 minutes and not die. Welcome home, Roy. Welcome home.
To a stop, and she's walking. She still hasn't turned around yet. She hears the sound of that bell. And right away, it's the exact same sound she had heard the week before. It's that kind of constant, sporadic sound of someone ringing a bell. But in her panic state, she doesn't know where it's coming from. She's so scared. Her anxiety is so high. She doesn't know if it's behind her or if it's off to the side. It's now completely dark out. And so she is full-blown terrified. There is someone or something behind her that has strung this beaver up that's probably watching her, and she can't see them. Even though she's beyond winded, she can barely breathe. She just starts sprinting as fast as she can. And as she's stumbling and falling on the rocks and tripping because she's not really looking where she's going, in the background and all around her, she's hearing this bell chiming and she's hearing something moving around in the woods behind her. And she pulls her phone out of her pocket, her iPhone, and as she's running, she dials her father. She puts the phone to her ear. She's crying. She's panting. She can barely breathe. Her father picks up and she's so relieved to hear his voice, but she can't even make a sentence. She just starts crying and wailing and pleading with him, Dad, come out to the forest. Meet me at the spot where the trail veers away from the stream. Meet me there. There's someone in the forest that's chasing me and I can't see them. Her father on the other end of the phone, he didn't know what to make of this, but he could hear the primal fear in his daughter's voice. And so he didn't ask any questions. He said, stay on the line. I'm coming to meet you right now. So Bella's father and mother, with Bella on the line, they run out of their house. They hop in their car. They speed the couple miles down the road. They park next to their daughter's car. And as they're running into the woods, they can hear way off in the woods the sound of the bell.
Oh, they can hear the bell.
They hear their daughter screaming on the phone. They can hear the bell coming through the phone, and she's begging them to please come into the woods, come in here, save me. And so the parents run into the woods and they begin running up the stream. Meanwhile, Bella, who's way out in the woods, she's still 10 or 15 minutes away from her parents. She is barely able to run at this point. She's exhausted almost all of her energy, and as she's getting closer and closer to her parents, the sporadic bell sound is getting louder and louder and louder, like whatever it is gaining on her. And she can hear behind her all these sticks and branches. They're breaking as if something is coming up to her. And finally, when it feels like this bell is right behind her head, she just kind of stops in defeat. She's too far away from her parents. She can't get to them in time. And so it was almost like she had to turn around and finally look at whatever it was that was behind her. And so terrified beyond words, Bella, who can barely breathe, she's so scared and so tired, she slowly turns around.
Oh God,
now, when she turns around and she's facing the other direction, she's looking across this clearing. She just happened to run past this clearing, and because it was a clearing, there was a little bit of moonlight that was coming down through the trees, just enough to illuminate this space that was about 50 feet wide. And as she's looking across this clearing, at first, she doesn't see anything. And then this tall, dark figure walks into the clearing, and as soon as it steps in, she can see it's got a bell at its waist. And with every step it took, it would violently ring the bell, causing the ringing sound. And so this thing starts moving into the clearing, and as Bella is staring at it, it was like time slowed down.
Oh man,
she could
like
not
a tree
process
creature.
what she was looking at. She didn't know what she was looking at. All she knew is whatever or whoever this is, they're coming straight at me. And so Bella suddenly got this unbelievable...
Oh, it's like... It makes me think of a Wendigo? Wendigo? But I don't think that's what it is. Or like there's other tree creatures, but I can't think of what they are called right now. The only thing coming to mind is a Wendigo. Yeah. That's what came to my mind. I know there's like other tree creatures.
Adrenaline rush. It was like her body went into autopilot to save her, and she turned around and began sprinting faster than she'd ever sprinted in her life. And as she ran, all she could hear was the sound of that bell, which she now knew represented steps this thing was taking.
Oh,
and so the bell was getting faster and faster. She knew it was gaining on her, and she began lying and screaming out loud that, "I'm on the phone with the police. They're right up ahead. They're going to be here any moment." But whatever it was that was behind her, they weren't phased. They were just charging ahead, gaining on her second by second. Meanwhile, her parents had made it to the meeting spot, but her father, he felt like, I can't just sit here, and he just starts charging into the woods. He can hear his daughter screaming.
You know, I wouldn't make it out, not even for the fact of dying because of running. I would just literally just pass out from the fear.
He can hear this bell getting louder and louder. He just starts running towards it. And sure enough, seconds later, he sees his daughter come bounding out of the forest, and she leaps into his arms. He just grabs her, turns around, and runs with her back to the meeting spot. He grabs his wife, and the three of them just charge out of the forest, back to the parking lot, back in their car, and they speed off.
And they never go back to that freaking forest again.
All of them are crying. They don't know what to make of what just happened. Bella's trying to describe it, but she can't. And her parents, they had been on the phone listening to their daughter screaming, and all they kept saying to each other, the parents, was, "I heard the bell. I heard the bell. I heard the bell," as if the bell confirmed their worst nightmares, that there really was someone or something out in those woods that was trying to do harm to their child. They would drive straight to the police station where Bella would file a report about what she experienced out in the forest. And then afterwards, her parents, as a precaution, took her to the hospital where she was determined to be okay, besides some bumps and bruises from falling down. The following morning, the police went out to the forest, to the area where Bella had explained where she had been. And they searched all along that animal foot trail and all along the stream, but they never found any sign of this dark figure with the bell. Bella would tell police that she had a handbag, and as she was running back, she dropped the bag. She remembered where she dropped it along the stream, but when the police went to that area, the bag was gone. Also, the beaver was no longer there. It was not tied up to the tree. It was not on the ground. It was all in her head. It was gone. The only thing police found that was out of the ordinary was they found a little ways off from the stream stream, basically along the path that Bella would have been running on, they found a t-shirt neatly folded placed underneath a rock. But the police and Bella and her family have no idea what that signifies. Ultimately, the police told Bella and her family that more than likely what she ran into was some kind of mentally unstable person that was living out in the woods, and perhaps when Bella came into the woods, they felt like she was on their property, and
They felt what? What? I think she's a vampire. I don't know about you, but being a vampire sucks. It's not that bad. Bro, literally trying to tell her, oh, it's fine. It's obviously someone else who just lives in a hole in the forest, and like you were totally on their territory, so they just murdered a beaver for absolutely no reason, cut its head off, hung it up in a tree to scare the shit out of you, and then rung a bell, and then when all that was done, they like folded a shirt neatly and put it under a rock. To just to warn you. That's it. that's it. That's what it was.
so they kind of tried to scare her off. But Bella has a hard time accepting that. She felt like, as she was running from whoever was behind her, that she was in mortal danger. That had it not been for her father running into the woods and literally grabbing her and running with her the rest of the way, that she may not have gotten out of the woods at all, that she might have been attacked and killed by whoever this was. She also can't help, when she looks back at the entire experience, thinking about that moment when she turned around and looked across that clearing and saw this figure come into the moonlight for the first time. That when it came into the moonlight, the way it was moving, the steps it was taking, they weren't normal, they were abnormal. There was just something off about this thing's movement, that it didn't seem like she was looking at a person, but rather some big animal. But regardless, since her ordeal, there have been no strange sightings out in those woods. However, almost no one ever goes in those woods, except for Bella and her family.
I wouldn't either.
And Bella and her family, they don't go in those woods anymore. So whoever or whatever is out there,
I wouldn't even live there anymore. I'd move.
Just out there. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's episode, let us know in the comments section what it is and where you found it. And if you're the first person to do that, we'll